Oh, shit.
Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the only football podcast tonight. We're going to be talking some Super Bowl stories, kind of talk a little bit about what the Chiefs, what the 49ers are going through. Then we're going to get into the final franchise who was looking for a head coach. They finally found one. Then we're going to talk a little bit more about some other stories around the NFL. And of course, we're going to end it with the Chives with Kyle. Let's get it. America is football.
Football is America. If you don't like it, you can kiss your candy ass. For the moment in time, I don't give a damn. Oh my God! No. You love this.
30-27. Chiefs win. Chiefs win 30-20. Woo!
Oh man, I'm watching that intro and I see how far we've come, because last year I see you said Chiefs win. And here we are a year later. And not much is changing in the sports world. Holy shit, we got Ginger in the chat in Little E. What's up, Little E?
Ginger!
Hell yeah! Let's go. But yeah, man, it's crazy to think
it has been a minute.
Year's gone by and the Chiefs are in the Super Bowl yet again. And we've said all the different storylines of how this was the most unlikely year, and they find a way to do it. And we mentioned yesterday the greatness of Patrick Mahomes is not lost on anybody, but there's a couple storylines that you said we were going to talk about the Super Bowl. We're not going to give our predictions away yet. We got too much time until football.
Not yet.
Until the Super Bowl.
Not yet, guys. Not yet.
Not yet. And to be honest, I haven't made a decision. You know, that's just the honest truth. This wasn't one that, like, as soon as I knew what the Super Bowl was, I immediately knew in my head. It's not like that. So, man, let's get right into it. Let's talk about some of these storylines about the Super Bowl that you mentioned.
Let's do it, dude. And I will say, I'm kind of like on the same boat with, as you were saying, like, this is a Super Bowl where it's like, I don't know who I'm picking yet either. It's one of those hard ones where I have to kind of look at it and really kind of take a step back and just be like, who's going to win it? Who is going to win it? Right. So I'm with you right there. But one of the first ones I wanted to talk about, just because I thought it was fun, you know, to kind of talk about a little bit about this, was Nick Bosa. Earlier this week, I think he said it either today or yesterday, something like that. You know, he was asked on his impressions on the Chiefs offensive line. Obviously,
can't agree more.
That's for yesterday.
Oh, you son of a bitch. You son of a bitch. Oh my God.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. But yeah, so Nick Bosa, you know, one of those very disrupted defensive end guys, was asked to give his impression on the Chiefs offensive line. And he gave a forward answer that was pretty funny. He just said they hold a lot. So obviously there's going to be a little bit of this going on during the Super Bowl between Nick Bosa and that offensive line. When we look at this offensive line too for the Chiefs, I mean, they've been really good. And you look at Jawaan Taylor and the new addition of, it was Jawaan Taylor. Oh man, who was it? And Smith. I forgot what his first name was, Smith, but those two guys were the only additions. And I mean, I say only, but two tackles are very important to the offensive line. Jawaan Taylor, Kyle, you know him quite well. But you know, Smith on the other end. So their offensive line throughout this playoffs has been pretty solid, only giving up 2 sacks through 3 games so far in the playoffs to Patrick Mahomes. And, you know, you start to wonder with like Nick Bosa, they hold a lot. You wonder if that kind of adds into it a little bit, but I don't know. Like, to me, the offensive line for the Chiefs has been pretty solid, you know, obviously for the playoffs. Obviously, they give Patrick Mahomes a lot of time to make decisions back there. And this is one of the matchups I think is going to be super important when we finally get Super Bowl Sunday in that game. Is Nick Bosa going to be able to get a sack? Because Nick Bosa right now, I believe, if I'm correct, he has 2 sacks in 2 playoffs games this year and 5 tackles. So he could definitely be a disruptor as he has been. But like, is the offensive line of the Chiefs going to be better? Like, I think in this case, I think I might have to go Chiefs offensive line, Kyle. I don't know what you're thinking, but I'm going Chiefs offensive line.
What I'm thinking is that this backdates much more than just Nick Bosa talking about this Chiefs team or this Super Bowl or even this specific offensive line. What is Nick Bosa really talking about here? Nick Bosa is talking about the last Super Bowl matchup between the 49ers and the Chiefs. And Nick Bosa was in that game.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a turning point in that game where it was 3rd and long. And we mentioned that play. Well, Nick Bosa was held on that play and it didn't get called. And you kind of got to like dig it. Like, of course, Nick Bosa didn't forget that. And he's such a disruptive player. But I mean, offensive linemen, they get away with holding a lot. I think once in a while we see a hold. So as much shit as we talk about the refs, I will say holding is probably a really difficult one to get right every time.
Yeah.
And when you have really good pass rushers, another guy that I think is held nearly every play and it doesn't get called, probably the most held person with the fewest penalties, Micah Parsons. Micah Parsons stays being held.
Yes.
And it's something that really good pass rushers know. And they know that the way the NFL is kind of geared towards is it's all for the offense and the defense doesn't get much. So I think it's just part of not just the attitude of like Nick Bosa, but that position group around the NFL. It's like, they're going to probably get away with some holding. But I think more than likely this was kind of a blast to the past for Nick Bosa. And just maybe sprinkle a little chives in there to remind the world that he hasn't gotten over that.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I like this comment by Ginger here. Joey Bosa blew his fucking lid last year in the playoffs. Had a point, though. I remember Joey Bosa. Oh, my God. Do you remember when he was at that playoff games? And Ginger, you also might remember this too. But there was like a video of him at whatever it was I think they were in Philly, right? Because Philly had the number 1 seed. Or was it San Francisco? One of them
Philly had the 1 seed.
And there was like a Philly fan that came up to him with his phone on. He's like, Joey, how's it feel like watching from the sidelines, from the box? You can't be in the playoffs. And Joey was like, funny, smart guy. And he kept going at him. And he's like, what's your bank account? Joey Bosa was like, what's your bank account look like? Oh, I bet your bank account. And I was like, oh, no, you brought the money into this. You're not going to win over anybody with the money argument.
Joey Bosa is such a douchebag, man. I don't know him personally, but I feel like you can learn a lot from people nowadays with the way social media is and the amount of interactions. Because, like, sometimes I heard a quote once that's like when somebody gives you the opportunity to see who they really are, don't take it for granted. They're so like if you're just honestly like a good, nice person, like, and people are recording you. And you're not aware, like you're not gonna be worried about it. Like, oh God, I hope nobody ever sees the real me leak out. And from what I've seen from Joey Bosa, it's just like I don't know if it's like a lack of maturity or it just reminds me of like the douchebag in high school that was throwing kids in lockers and just like getting away with it because his genetics are superior as far as strength and size, but.
Totally not something that happened to Kyle. Totally not something.
No, it's not. No, I had an older brother.
No, I swear to God, it never happened to me.
I'm serious, man. It hasn't. I'm kidding.
Stop with the lies, Kyle. Oh, Lil Lee,
But
we'll see you later. Thanks, man. Fuck the Chiefs just for Kyle, he said.
hell yeah. I love that energy. I'm sad you're leaving now. we
Damn it,
we need
that.
more of that energy here.
Yeah. Another one I did want to get into, Kyle, too. And this was more recent, and it has to do with Cam Newton once again. And Cam Newton talking shit about Brock Purdy.
He can't help himself.
He can't, dude. It's just this. It's like one of those things where the phrase, you living in your head rent free. That's what Brock Purdy is in Cam Newton's head right now, because Cam Newton was talking again about Brock Purdy being a game manager, and that just seems to be a whole entire topic on its own, and not only with Cam Newton, but with like a ton of people. So Cam Newton on his 4th and 1 podcast recently said, "What did I say? Brock Purdy is a game manager. That's not hate. That's what I feel to be facts. But I still reserve the right to say this, to be labeled a game changer. Brock Purdy has to be the best player on the offensive side of the ball. That's not the case. Christian McCaffrey is. I ain't recanting shit. If you want to be honest and you add in the 49ers defensive talent plus the offensive talent, Brock Purdy is the 10th best player on the 49ers.
Really?
Yeah.
Then how come when Brock Purdy was injured in the NFC Championship game, CMC didn't step in and win the football game? If he's the best player on the team, last time I checked, he's not a quarterback.
Yeah.
So that you're comparing apples to oranges. Like Nick Bosa is the best player. Von Miller was the Super Bowl MVP. So Peyton Manning didn't matter. Like, what are you talking about, dude? It's not how life works. It's not how football works. And then he made another comment that Brock Purdy was the 10th best player on his team. And I'm like, what is up? Yeah, I feel like he feels like he has to double down because Purdy's now in the Super Bowl. By the way, this is a kid that's come in and he's done things that have surprised everybody. It's not like anybody knew that he was going to be this good, but it seems like a lot of people are willing to kind of accept it and be like, that's really cool. And then the people that are scouting that get paid millions of dollars that couldn't have fucked up any more worse than drafting Trey Lance and Zach Wilson at 2 and 3. And this guy is the last pick in the last round. So I feel like there's people, I feel like they have to cover their ass. Like, oh no, he's just a game manager, because if the truth is that Brock Purdy's really this good, then that means that they're really bad at their job. And Brock Purdy also, I don't know if you heard this, but he signed a massive deal being a brand ambassador for Toyota. And that makes him the first NFL player, not just active, like in general, that Toyota's ever used to be a brand ambassador for their company.
Wow.
So
I did not know that.
Yeah. And they do. I feel like people are just such haters, and I don't understand why. It's like, Cam, you already had your time. You were an MVP, and you went to a Super Bowl, and you were never the same since then. And I last time I checked, I don't hear Von Miller, talking about how he destroyed your career. I've never heard him say it one time.
Yeah.
Even though he has all the right to say that. But yeah, a guy that you don't even but then a guy you don't even know anything about, you're gonna sit in your podcast booth because you're not good enough to be an NFL quarterback, and you're gonna talk shit about somebody that you don't even know. I mean, that it's just, they say the tongue has the ability to tear people down and uplift people, and it's the same muscle. And some people just would rather tear people down. I mean, even you look at this Taylor Swift stuff, a lot of that just comes from people wanting to just tear people down for no reason. And it's like, dude, get over it. I saw a news article that added up all of the seconds Taylor Swift was on TV for the championship game the championship game. It was 45 seconds. 45 seconds total. I mean, and we have the ticker and the counter on, but it's a joke. It's not fun. It's fun because it is fun to make fun of the NFL, but like, this is getting like way out of hand. Yeah. And I mentioned that I was gonna mention to you about the rig thing, and I'm gonna save it for my chives. But yeah, dude, Cam Newton is a hater, and I actually like Cam Newton, so I don't like this side of him. And I think it would be a lot easier for him if he just said he was wrong, but he decided to double down instead.
Exactly. And then he goes on to say too, because this is like what makes it even worse, right? Because he goes, did he have a great game in the NFC Championship game? Yes. Has he been playing out of his mind? Yes. Is he a quarterback that's hot? Yes. But he's still the 10th best player of the team. How do you do all that and you're still the 10th best player on the team? And you bring up the best point. It's like, well, if he's only the 10th best player of this team was basically the same last season when they were in the NFC Championship game. They got better on the defense too, right? With some signings, Hargrave and Chase Young. But the offense for the most part hasn't changed. So how was he only the 10th best player? So,
and that's not even, we're not even talking position groups. We don't compare. Yeah. We don't rank based on team. We rank based on positions. The Pro Bowl is a vote that goes by position group. So you don't even rank this way. This is not even how it's done. Like, you don't go through and you're like, who's the best player? Is it Nick Bosa or CMC? Yeah. Not a real question.
Not a real question. Near an actual conversation either.
Yeah. And he played NFL football. That's what's mind blowing about it.
And I just, to me, it's like, how much more does Purdy really have to do to kind of take that label off? Like, look, I'm not gonna sit here and be like, hey, he's up there with Mahomes. Hey, he's up there with Allen, but he's up there right now. Like he's 2 years in a row he made the NFC Championship. Now he's going to the Super Bowl in his second year as the last pick in the draft. That definitely means something. That definitely means something to him and to kind of the development, right? Like going forward, confidence is higher. Like another year under Shanahan, another year with these weapons. Like this means something to these guys, whether, Cam Newton or anyone for that matter wants to hate or, and just call this guy a fucking random game manager and not a good quarterback. It's like, how is he able to hit all these milestones, but he's the 10th best player? Like that just doesn't compute. Like, yes, I get it. Some quarterbacks luck their way into a Super Bowl, like fucking Rex Grossman, for example, for my Bears. The one guy for the Ravens, not Flacco, the one before that when they won the Super Bowl in like 2005 or something like that. I forget his name, Trent Dilfer. Like these guys, yes, they luck themselves into Super Bowls, into Super Bowl wins even. And yes, you can make an argument for that, but when it's Brock Purdy, who at one point in the season was getting ridiculous MVP talks and took that 3-game losing streak and willed his team into the number 1 seed, like winning games, all that stuff. Like, again, I just think this is just a bunch of haters, like you said, just talking shit, man. And it's just really annoying, but I think it really does depend now, like how he does in the Super Bowl. Can he shed that, like, finally, right? Like it's unwarranted, but I still think that's something that someone like him wants to just get rid of,
Yeah, and that's not going to happen. If Purdy has a good game, Cam Newton's not going to change because he's already had the opportunity to change when Brock Purdy came back and won the NFC Championship. That was his moment. And like I put the quote on the bottom, but even what you said, Newton said, okay, cool. Did he have a great game? Yes. He has been playing out of his mind. Yes. He is a quarterback that's hot. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. There's no but. Just like get rid of that but after that. That's the end. If it was easy to have a 6-pack, everyone would have one. If it was easy to be a quarterback, everybody would be one. And it's not. And I think some people just can't handle, especially somebody as physically gifted as Cam Newton was. I mean, he was one of the most gifted quarterbacks we've ever seen. Big arm, fast, elusive, powerful, everything. And Brock Purdy's like the opposite of that. He's not huge. He's not Will Levis fucking banged up. He's not
just fucking. Ooh!
He's not launching it 80 yards down the field like Josh Allen, and yet neither was Tom Brady. Tom Brady, look at his combine pictures. Did that look like a physical specimen to anybody?
Peyton Manning had a huge head. That's it.
Yeah, dude. And it was only his forehead for some reason.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's part of it too, is that some people and it makes sense. Like I mean, he shouldn't be this way, but put yourself in his shoes. Like you were, this physically one in a lifetime athletes, and you didn't have the same success that this guy has. It's really easy to be like, no, but look at his team. They're making up for his lack of, natural raw talents. But in reality, Brock Purdy is just like, both things are true. He's a product of a good system, good coaching, great playmakers, and he's also made the most of that opportunity. And that is something that Jimmy Garoppolo was able to do somewhat. But look at some of the other guys. Nick Mullins. Why wasn't Nick Mullins so good? He had his opportunities to play with this team. Why didn't Trey Lance work out?
Exactly.
Brock Purdy just happened to be better than all these other quarterbacks, yet he's somehow, this 10th best player in the team. Like, get the hell out of here with that.
Yeah. And that's what Ginger's saying too. It's like, saw Purdy throw about a 12-yard out to Aiyuk, could not have handed it to him more accurately. He's good. He says he's good. So I just again, it just seems to be one of those things, because like, you can look at Purdy and you talked about how he's very good because of the system too. And it's like, okay, he's not Mahomes, because Mahomes, look what he's had to work with, right? Like, he's had Travis Kelce there the entire time, but his wide receiving room has fluctuated throughout his entire 6 seasons that he's been there. And yeah, Mahomes is able to work with that, because Kyle, you and I have said it too. Like, most of the times a quarterback has to be able to make these guys really good. And that's a sign of like a great quarterback, right? And Purdy's a damn good quarterback. He's got good weapons. Obviously, what the day will come where he will probably not have Aiyuk, not have Debo, or vice versa, right? Something may happen where he might not have weapons. And, if he has to go through the same thing that Mahomes does, then he has to go through the same thing. It's just right now, to say he's not to say he's a game manager, to really just kind of like put him down in the dumps, dude. It's just ridiculous.
On a more positive note, I got some good news. Ravens tight end Mark Andrew, lens assistant during in-flight medical emergency. There was a lady that was aboard a Southwest Airlines flight to Phoenix, Mark Andrews was. And on that flight, one of the passengers was experiencing a medical emergency, during which she had difficulty breathing. And she also had low blood pressure, according to another witness. So Andrews, who I didn't know this, a type 1 diabetic, approached a doctor and a nurse. So there's a doctor and a nurse attending to her, and he went up to them and was like, hey, the woman might be having an issue with her blood sugar. And then he offered the use of his own personal diabetic testing kit. So the woman, the woman underwent the finger prick test, and he was right, gave her orange juice. After her heart rate stabilized, she was able to depart the plane on her own, and that was pretty cool. Yeah. So, I mean, that I love stories like that. I mean, not for the lady that can't breathe, but just that somebody was like, you know what? I think I have some information that could help, and it actually, because sometimes doctors or nurses, sometimes when you're too close to the problem, you miss it. And somebody over there in the corner, is just like, try this. And they're like, oh shit, dude, you were right. I thought that was cool.
I like Ginger's comment here. Mark Andrews looks like the type of guy to stop the plane and carry it 6 miles to the runway if there was an emergency, faster than it could have flown.
I'm a doctor.
You ever seen what is it, Airplane? The movie Airplane was like, he goes up to the guy, he's like, excuse me, are you a doctor? And he has a stethoscope in. He's like, yes, I am a doctor.
Yeah.
Shit, it's so funny.
The Chappelle Show, I think, did a spin-off of that where he was like doing infomercials. And he's like, you can tell that I'm a doctor because I have this stethoscope in and I'm wearing it on my chest. So buy this product.
Oh, God, man. I'll show I missed that. All right. I had a couple other ones. One I thought was really funny. Well, I'll save that one for the last. But you know how every year for the Super Bowl, Kyle, they do the Madden simulator? and it's always like a ridiculous kind of simulation that they do. I
So
don't
they
know.
let the computer play each other and see how
Yeah.
close the results are to the actual game.
No, they try to predict who's going to win the Super Bowl. So they run the simulator like the week prior to the Super Bowl, shit like that, whatever it is. And then they're like, hey, due to the Madden, simulator, the Chiefs are going to win or the Eagles are going to win.
I didn't
or the
know that,
Patriots.
but how accurate is the Madden? That's
So
the question.
since Super Bowl 46, the Madden simulator has been 5-7 in predicting Super Bowls, and the one it got scary good. Let me see it here. The one that it did really well on, I think it was the Seahawks one, where it actually predicted the score and the winner who would of that game. It was like 24-21 Seahawks against whoever was
The Patriots.
Was it the Patriots? No, it wasn't the Patriots. Was it?
Yeah, because the Patriots got a pick on the 1 yard line and that sealed the game. And
Oh,
no.
Ran it. I'm talking about the one that the Seahawks won.
That was against the Broncos.
The Broncos. Okay.
But so that was 43-8. I doubt the simulator got that part right.
Then, no, the Seahawks only won one Super Bowl, right?
Yeah. So they lost to the Patriots the next year, but they beat Denver in 2013.
Then which one am I? I saw the one that it was talking about. Maybe it was another one. Either way, it actually got one of them scary good. But for this one, again, 5-7 since Super Bowl 46. For this one, it was predicting a 49ers win. And Kyle, I want you to try to guess the score that it simulated.
I'm going to say 17-20.
10-6. 10-6 was the final score that the Madden simulator was saying that the 49ers were going to win on. And look, we've seen a Super Bowl like that. What happened with the Patriots and the Rams, right? It was like 12-6 or 12-7 or something like that. Like, it was a disgusting Super Bowl. It was one of the worst ones.
People were celebrating after the Super Bowl because it was finally over. They weren't even celebrating a victory. They were just like, I'm glad I don't have to watch that shit anymore.
So for all you bettors out there, just like Kyle here,
take the under.
10-6. Take the under, just like Bill's saying. 10-6 is still better than 0-3.
I'm trying to find the one that you saw. I was doing
I'm looking for it too. I'm trying to find
Super Bowl. This is Super Bowl 58, right?
This one is Super Bowl 58. Yeah.
So last year, the Chiefs and the Eagles were in the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And the simulator predicted it was going to go to overtime.
Yeah, because it was like 38-35 or something like that.
Yeah. Out of the 57 wins for Kansas City, 27 of the games would be the Chiefs winning by 10 or more points. At least 30 of the games decided by less than 10 points, which that game was decided by 3, right? I think.
Yeah, the final score to
38-35.
One, something like that. Yeah.
That was probably the funnest Super Bowl I've ever seen, maybe.
I mean, I think it was super fun because we were dressed up like
State Farm
and Rick from State Farm, and we were doing it in my living room.
that was a good one. I hated the ending. That holding call was so soft at the end of that game. And even what's his name was Greg Olsen. And I was like, man, he's got balls. The first time they're like, yeah, dude, you can do the Super Bowl. He's like, I don't know about that. In this call, in this situation, at this moment in the game, I think you let that one slide. I'm like, no shit. But at least he's saying it. I'm tired of these experts coming into the booth and they're like, yeah, the ref got that one right. I'm Gene. Okay.
Gene's Stradatory over here. Fucking nobody.
Now we're going to bring in Adam Vinatieri to talk about the wind and the kick. That's like...
And then Adam comes on and he's like, that was actually a bullshit call there, Gene. But I guess,
I love when it gets passive aggressive between Troy Aikman's one where he'll like bring in like an expert and he'll be like, yeah, I don't know about that. We'll agree to disagree. And I'm like, yeah, he's so pissed. He wants to be like, you're a fucking idiot. I played football my whole life. That is not a penalty. I don't care if you're an expert. I'm an expert.
You have no idea what the fuck you're talking about.
Do you think though, that's kind of a good segue. Do you think that because the NFL has been under scrutiny specifically with these big moment games and big kind of penalties deciding them, that there's going to be more of a point of emphasis on keeping the flags in their pocket this time around? Or do you think it's going to be not something that's really thought of much?
I don't know, man. That's a very good question, but I could see them not really like listening to the outside noise, because I think, it's always one of those things where, again, we've heard it from officials, retired or on podcasts and interviews, whatever, that they have to look at the teams and miss calls the games prior and be like, okay, we got to be more aware of that. We got to do this a little bit better. We've got to be able to call these. So I don't know if the outside noise is as much of a factor as it is like within their own circles. You know what I mean? I am not biased, Nick. I like that one. So I don't think with what's been going on, especially when you got taunting calls, in the AFC Championship game, I don't think with what's going on, like the outside noise is going to get to the officials at all. I think they're just going to call the game how they would call a game. Are they going to fuck up? Yeah, the Super Bowl is always good for at least 2 fuck ups on each side of the ball. So I'm not like expecting a clean, perfect called game. I'm definitely expecting a call where we're going to be streaming it, watching it, and being like, there's no way they just called that.
Yeah.
Oh, good point, Bill.
Yeah. I just thought of something, though, that we're probably not even thinking of. Remember, the Super Bowl is going to be played in Vegas. So, and this is an idea I just thought of myself.
Mm-hmm.
The Super Bowl is going to be in Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
So, the refs might get paid out. I mean, who runs the refs? Think about it. The betting industry.
That's right.
This is just
Bill.
coming to my mind, right, Bill?
I
feel
that. No, I know. I know. Bill, I feel like was just saying something else, but you were on the right track, Kyle.
Bill wrote it out after I said it.
Yeah,
Clever Bill. Clever Bill.
He did.
No, Bill's got a really great point. Think about it. The game's in Vegas, so maybe it'll have the opposite effect, because they're going to be like, okay, all eyes are going to be on.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first Super Bowl we've had in Vegas. We got to make sure we don't fuck up. But I just don't understand why. And I've said this a million times, especially during the game.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't they just wear like an AirPod or something in their ear? And those refs in New York that let them know on an expedited review, hey, we did we're not going to take a bunch of time here. So we know the technology is there to communicate in real time to the referees. Why not when they get a call wrong, doesn't that thing go off in their ear? Hey, that's totally bullshit, and you just got it. Like, I'm not saying you have to take advantage of it. Like, there should be a threshold where, hey, we'll only go in like 1 or 2 times per game, tops. Like, it's not one of those things where you want to see a bunch, because then you'll actually the public will actually over time lose faith in the refs if they're always being corrected. So I get that.
Mm-hmm.
But when 1 or 2 calls that are massive, and they're not even discretion calls, they're just wrong. And we've seen that. Why can't those be fixed? I just don't understand. Do you think the NFL is going to get there? Or do you think this chaotic variable needs to stay in for bigger reasons that, get into, some of the conspiracy worlds and stuff like that? I just don't understand.
I was going to say, I think it's like inching there, but it's going at a really slow pace right now, because if you got baseball going into instant replays now, a couple years back now that they've done it, like, you've got to be able to show, like, you're the top league in the US, probably in the world right now, in terms of like all eyes on you. It's 365 days a year of football news, all that stuff. Like, the NFL is up there. They've got the power, they've got the money, and they've got the influence. But I feel like it's just taking a while to get there, because I think with the refs too, the refs in the NFL are only part-time. I think we talked about that. They're
Mhm.
only a part-time gig. It's not a full-time, like I think every
Lawyers,
other. Yeah, I think I think
accountants.
like accountants, lawyers.
Well, when I went to the Broncos game, I walked back to my car with the head official that was refing
Oh
the Broncos
yeah.
Raiders game, and I talked to him about it the whole walk to the car, and he was like, he mentioned like a lot of accountants, and plus, one of my friend's sisters is really good friends with the first female referee,
Mhm.
and amongst all the referees, that, like you said, it's a part-time job, and a lot of them are like highly functioning professionals. I'm talking like
Oh, I
like
see what you're
great
saying.
lawyers, great accountants, stuff like that. And they said, I can tell you if any of that stuff's going on, it's going on way up there. But as a head ref over all of these, it's not
Mhm.
coming down to my level. And I sure the hell am not, you know, going down the chain with that either. It's just not happening.
Oh.
And he goes, as far as like somebody getting a call blatantly wrong that turns the game, he's like, I can tell you from every ref that I've had underneath me, nobody wants to be that guy. And he said it with
Yeah.
like real conviction. I didn't feel like I was being bullshitted. And this guy didn't have to talk to me anyway. He was going out of his way to
Mhm.
answer those kind of difficult questions. And I just wanted to bring that up because it was a kind of like a once in a lifetime opportunity to have that conversation.
Yeah.
And I believed him. I did.
Yeah, and I like that because, it's not that this is their entire job. There was one thing too my wife and I were looking at, but the cheerleaders are also like they're also just they get paid by like game, by hours, by like you're making like $23,000 maybe if you're a cheerleader in an NFL season. So for the NFL refs to also be like part-time, it just kind of like to me it makes it very difficult for them to really hone in on this skill of being an NFL ref and get reps and sets, for example, like a football player would, or try to collaborate on new ideas of how to make calls a little bit faster, how to be able to tell the difference, how to explain it to each other, how to talk to each other, things like that. Like,
Is it a union?
I think it is because remember the one year the refs went on strike and they brought in like a bunch of like random refs and
Oh,
it was like one of the worst called years in the NFL. So I think that part of it too was also like, hey, you guys saw the alternative. You guys want us or do you guys want these other guys? Like basically the backups to the refs because they did go on strike there for a bit. I forget what year it was, but it wasn't that long ago.
yeah, dude. I think another thing to keep in mind is like the fact that the NFL wouldn't want to hire professionals to do this
Mm-hmm.
job. It's not like they don't have the money. So
They got
it's kind of
money.
it's like, and on top of that, you don't even have to put more money in the budget. You're paying these guys however much. Guess what? There's somebody that would love to do that. And you know what?
Mhm.
I've actually said this about a lot of things in life. Like people, I say all, and I have thoughts, and that doesn't mean that it's like my belief. It's just a thought. And I
Mhm.
had one thought that I didn't think like I feel like a lot of corruption kind of happens when people are being paid too much money. And
That too.
I was saying like, why do doctors, make $250,000? I mean, and they're like, because it's a necessity. I'm like, yeah, so is being a pilot.
Yeah.
They make 80. Like,
Mhm.
why is there, few select jobs that pay? And I understand they have to go to school for a long time. My brother's married to anesthesiologist, so I get all of that.
Oh,
It's
wow.
just when you
Money.
it's just when you like when you have a job that doesn't pay that much money, you inadvertently attract people that have true passions for it.
Mhm.
I didn't become a pilot so I could be rich. I became a pilot because I was always mesmerized with flying. I wanted to be a doctor because I wanted to help people. Not I had just did this because my dad put me through med school and now I'm rich. And
And
I
I
feel
was
like
making 250.
yeah, it's like I feel like the same thing applies to the NFL. Like you could pay regular people on the street the same amount of money that you're paying these refs that are part-time, and I'm sure that job would be attractive to people like myself who like care deeply about getting it right. And the real question is like, why wouldn't they take that approach? And then it's like, oh, because it's a club. It's like this referee, club where it's like, hey, we're gonna keep doing this part-time and nobody's gonna shut it down. And it doesn't add up to me. It doesn't make sense. Like, why? It's not like these people need the money. I mean, they're clearly doing it because they enjoy it. I'm sure lawyers and accountants and stuff are doing pretty well. And from what I heard, most refs are making over 6 figures easily. So I just don't understand why it's such an outdated system. It almost feels like if the world was coming to an end and the population was just plummeting, and we like lawyers are now being accountants and accountants are being referees, and it's like nobody's ever stopped to be like, why don't referees just be referees? Maybe the lawyers can just be lawyers. Like,
just pay them what they need to be paid, and educate them, have more training, have them go through like what Ginger was saying, a zebra school. You know what I mean? Like, get that like most up-to-date technology, because like it's just going to make the game better. It's going to make fan reactions better. Like, and really at the end of the day too, Kyle, like no matter what, no matter how good the refs are, no matter how many missed calls they do, I'm still going to watch every Sunday, every Thursday, and every Monday night.
I signed an oath at birth.
Yeah. At birth. And that's the thing, is like the NFL, Roger Goodell, like all the owners, they know this. They know they have a fucking stranglehold on football. They go across the pond to UK, to Germany. They go down south to Mexico. They go everywhere, and there's always a full stadium. They know, but it's just, I just wish that they would take the time to make it a little more expedited. Like you said, it's just, it would be so much better.
Yeah. And it's all, and another side of it is that like, there is no such thing as everyone being happy. It's just not a thing. Like
also
the team that, because there's a large amount of discretion calls, and the team that's on the wrong side of those is always going to think that it's rigged, or there's some big conspiracies and microchips or whatever. So I think they should strive to be better, but understanding perfection is not an actual attainable thing when it comes to this, unless like I think Ginger said it, or somebody said it about the Skycam and XFL. You know, like they and then Bill was like, no, they were like bragging about how they were getting it right. So that's funny too, because it's like then you have like an actual
awesome,
tangible solution. And then if I was like, I didn't see it.
Like, I don't know what you guys are talking about.
No, we're not doing that shit. That's weird.
That's fucking lame.
Like, why?
Yeah,
these are
it's
the
like
questions that I want to hear answers to. Like,
and I think that was like another reason why the XFL is now under the NFL, right? Like, because they're able to kind of experiment with it. Like they were able to experiment with certain special teams things last year. Who knows what they're going to do this year, but like it was a good like experiment test bed, if you will, for the NFL. So I don't know. I just think that they should implement some of those things from the XFL into the NFL. Is it going to be weird? Yeah, sure. But like, so was the tuck rule when you invented that. So was taunting when you put that into the rules a couple of years ago. So was what's the tush push that's probably going to get banned here. And it's like, wait, we like those. Those are fun. Those are cool.
And by the way, if you fumble the football out of bounds, it's a touchback for the other team. The people that are like, the penalty doesn't, or the crime doesn't fit the punishment, it's like wrong. That is the defense's side of the ball. That is their end zone that they are protecting. That is their territory. It was never yours to begin with. If you cough the ball up inside of that, you fucked up. And there
Yeah.
are certain areas on the field where you have to have a higher awareness of mistakes, and you can't remove the costly mistakes in football, because
Yeah.
that's what makes nail biting football. Oh, this is a costly area. I just don't like some of these. Like, I'm okay with innovation, but you have to protect the integrity of the game. And there's a couple core things that really can't change. And I think I'm reminded of our conversation last offseason when you talked about the onside kick and I didn't want it to be approved. And they were like, well, only 30% of kicks or whatever, 10% probably, maybe even fewer get recovered.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, well, maybe the game shouldn't have come down to that.
Mhm,
Like, maybe if you're relying on an onside kick, you already lost the game. So I think there's certain rules, like that's a big one that I might come across as old school or old fashioned or not innovative, but I just think the game is so perfect. All it needs to do is fine tune things. I don't want to see them remodel anything, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it kind of like to me, it's like, okay, if you do fumble it in their end zone, and when you look at the other side of it, like a safety, you just tackled them in their end zone, you get 2 points. You know what I mean? And if they fumble in your end zone, you get the ball back. Like, I don't know why they're thinking about the offense in this sense. It's like the defense did its job and they did it really well. So really what you're saying is like the punishment doesn't fit the crime. It's like, but the defense earned that in a sense. You know, L'Jarius Sneed over here punching the ball out, or McDuffie, I forgot who it was, against the Ravens on Zay Flowers, like right before he crossed the goal line, he took the conscious effort to go, I'm going to try to punch this ball out because a fumble is way better than 6 points to their team. And if it decides to go out of bounds and we get the ball back, I did my job, and that's my reward for doing my job. Fuck Zay Flowers. He's the one who tried to get it across, even though I think his forward momentum would have gotten him in the end zone. It's like, no, dude, like you're taking it away from the defense too. Like there's two sides to this coin here. If you're going to take it away, if you're going to say they shouldn't have to turn it over, it's like, well, what about the defense's great play? What about that? Like, does that just go
or what
unrewarded?
Or what about for like, I get all that, but even just for the sake of argument, take the defense away. What about the offense? Like, that's their penalty. Like that's their punishment. Like you're not rewarding the defense. You are punishing the offense. It's simple as that. Like with Champ Bailey, 2005, Nick probably remembers this. Champ Bailey got an interception. This is the best game I've ever watched in my life at this point. And he picks the ball up. This was in Mile High, so the place is going wild. And he's running down the sideline. It's a 99-yard interception return. And on the 4-yard line, he slows down and he like starts to like walk in, and he gets hit, like blindsided, and he fumbles the ball, and the ball goes through the end zone. It's a touchback for the other team. And we still ended up winning that game. But that was the moment where I feel like I came face to face with that rule. And even as the team that was affected by it, I still was like, it's a good rule.
Yeah.
Maybe you shouldn't walk. Maybe you shouldn't have been so casual, going into the end zone. Maybe that shouldn't have happened in the first place. But moving on, Rick, the Commanders have made a decision with weren't we just talking about this yesterday, how Dan Quinn was going to stay in Dallas, and
at least that's what
Ben
the
Johnson,
word was. Ben Johnson and Glenn, whatever his name is, Glenn, were staying in Detroit, and it seemed like Quinn was going to as well.
Yeah, and I was really surprised by this. So the hiring is apparently it's seeking to address the Commanders' glaring problems on the defensive side of the ball. They fired Jack Del Rio, I think like week 10, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And last year, Washington finished dead last in total defense in 2023. So a season in which they traded not one, but both of their young edge rushers at the deadline might be a reason for that. I'm just saying, like, you get rid of Montez Sweat and you see how impactful he was. And to me, and I felt strongly about this the whole time when we were approaching the trade deadline. I said Montez Sweat is a piece you have to keep. You can't. I mean, you can move Chase Young, but you can't move them both. And they were just trying to, I guess, reload. But it just doesn't make sense to me because you're going to take Montez Sweat, you're going to send him to the Bears, then you're going to take their pick and you're going to draft somebody to fill that spot, and they're not going to be as good as Montez Sweat. So this is kind of why I'm against trading Surtain for a pick, because we're going to have to draft a corner and he's not going to be as good. So what are we doing here? But anyway, this is now going to apparently be Dan Quinn's team, and we know that he is capable. He had the Atlanta Falcons in a Super Bowl. But what happened in that Super Bowl? 28-3, and he let them come back. I have a hard time believing Andy Reid or Sean McVay or Sean Payton or any of these offensive coaches would have let that happen. But who did let it happen? He did, a defensive guy. I can see it happening to Belichick. What happened to the Lions? Is Dan Campbell known as an offensive guy? No, Ben Johnson's doing it. Yeah. So, I mean, it's what do they say? Based? That's pretty based.
That's pretty based.
I mean, there's a lot of
Kyle's Gen
there.
Z. Kyle's a Gen Zer.
Woo! No, fuck that.
He's with the youth. I
have no TikTok on my phone.
Just a bunch of dick pics.
Yeah. So Quinn is going to be the guy, and he's going to take over, and Sam Howell is probably, I don't know if he's going to be the guy or if they're going to draft somebody. Yeah. I think there's a chance, and just hear me out here, and then I want your take on all of this. I think there's a chance that Sam Howell is the guy next year, and the Broncos trade with the Commanders for the number 2 overall pick. Ooh. Because clearly the Commanders ownership has made they sent a clear message that they are in a stage right now where they are just trying to get as much draft picks as possible. And that this is not just, we're going to draft a quarterback. It's like, if you're willing to move off those 2 guys, who's to say that they're not like, hey, why don't we do this? Why don't we ride with Sam Howell for one more year? We probably won't win a ton of games, but we'll get a ton of draft picks, and we'll be in a very similar situation that Atlanta is this year, where if they get a guy like Justin Fields, all of a sudden they're a playoff team. So I think that it's really possible that Sam Howell, I felt great about Sam Howell all year. Yeah, it was a shitty team, but you know what? They gave up the most total yards. So Sam Howell constantly had to throw 3-4 touchdowns a game. Maybe you can bring a little bit of, I don't know, not certainty, but you can make it so Sam Howell's not having to play in a chaotic way by establishing that defensive side of the ball, which is what Dan Quinn's going to do. And you get a bunch of draft picks. So how do you feel about the hiring? And do you think it's possible that Sam Howell is going to be the guy that they ride with for his first year?
So the hiring, I don't know, man. I kind of feel like about it. I thought the Commanders are going to try to go, and it's tough. They don't have a head coach, so they are in need of a coach, no matter who or whatever type of coach is available, whether it's like a grade A, B, C, whatever you want to call it. So I think Dan Quinn was the best one left, if that kind of makes any sense. Like, he was in line for head coaching positions last year, and he said, you know what? I think I could win a Super Bowl with this team, similar to what Ben Johnson is saying, right, with the Lions. Dan Quinn said that about the Cowboys. No, I'm not going to take any head coaching jobs. I like what's going on in Dallas. I think we could do it. As far as him going to the Commanders, I just didn't expect that. I thought they were going to try to go for a big name, a Bill Belichick, Ben Johnson, Slowick, something to that nature, even a Vrabel, to be honest. I really thought they were going to try to hit the nail on the head with a big hammer.
Right. Dan Quinn was set to be the Seahawks coach. Remember, that was reported when they moved.
That was also exactly, and that's kind of what I expected with Dan Quinn as well. It's like, oh, this is perfect. he's been there. He had the Legion of Boom there with Pete Carroll and the Seahawks. Like, he is a defensive guy. What he's going to bring to the Commanders is definitely that, like, hey, we're going to build the defense. We're going to be a very strong defensive team, and we're going to do it through the draft. We're going to do it through development, kind of how he did it with the Cowboys, kind of how he did it with the Seahawks. And even with, like, in his head coaching gig with Atlanta, he went to a Super Bowl, man. So this definitely all counts for something. I just didn't expect for this to be the route that the Commanders were going to go. But is he going to do a good job? I think he's going to do a good job in there. What I really do think is that they actually draft a quarterback. I really do think they draft a quarterback here at 2. I think they like Sam Howell. I think Sam Howell is going to be a pretty solid quarterback. I just don't know under Dan Quinn. I don't know if a new coach is gonna go in there and say, this guy who, threw for 300 plus yards. Yes, he was a big part, but when we put in Brissett these last 3 weeks, like, he was way better. Brissett was way better than him these last few weeks. This is the same offensive line we talked about, right? His offensive line was dog shit. But the fact that Brissett was able to come in and make it look like a better line and make this team look much better, because they've got a really good set of weapons there in Washington. So I think Dan Quinn is going to look at that and be like, just recency bias, man. I don't think you're the guy. I think we're going to go with Drake May, the guy from LSU, the guy from Florida State, whatever quarterback they want to go with. I think Dan Quinn is going to say that. And he's kind of going into a very good situation. You got new ownership. You got people that want to spend money. Josh Harris, I believe, was the guy from the 76ers.
Well, no, Josh Harris is the owner.
Or Josh Harris is the owner, right? But he was the owner of the 76ers as well, right? I think that's what
I think they brought in the GM from
the former GM from the Warriors.
Yeah. That sounds better.
That's who it was. So
yeah, dude, I agree with what Nick's saying, and that's what I think. So are you saying that they're going to draft a quarterback? Like, is that your opinion?
I think so.
See, I don't. I'm with Nick on this one. I think, and you gotta also imagine that you are going in for this interview as Dan Quinn, and the ownership group tells you, "Hey, no pressure on this first year. Let's ride with Sam Hill. Let's sell that second pick for 4 picks and a player, okay? Yeah. And then we'll ride with Sam Howell. If we're pleasantly surprised, hell yeah. If not, now we have a top 5 pick in the next year." And sometimes I think for fans, we're so focused on, like, how are we going to be good this year? And we forget that some of these conversations are 3-year plans, 2-year plans. So I think that's what's going to happen. But the Taysom Hill comment was hilarious because Denver brought in another coach from the Saints. I don't know if you heard that.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, so I mean, there's like an ongoing joke that it's the Denver Saints.
The Denver Saints.
So when Nick goes, the question is, when are we gonna send? What was it? A second round? Oh, okay. Here it is. What I want to know is, when are we trading a 7th to the Saints for Taysom Hill?
Denver Saint. I love it. But still, I guess in like that same situation though, it's like, is the, because it seems like now is the time to strike for quarterbacks though. Last year we were talking about this draft, and I don't really hear any talks about next draft the quarterbacks are going to be better, or 2 years from now the quarterbacks are going to be better. There's always going to be a quarterback in the draft, no matter what. That's going to go. Shedeur Sanders. Yeah, he's definitely up there for sure.
He's going to be the next Commander's quarterback. Mark my words.
All right, settle down. Commander's
Mark it down.
But
Drew Allar from Penn State.
Drew Allar. Yep, Drew Allar. That guy's going to be the next Washington.
Or Connor Weigman. These are going to be big names next year. You know how it is. You don't hear about him.
Kyle's making names up at this point.
No. Penn State, Texas A&M, and Colorado. That's where the top 3 quarterbacks are coming from.
And you got Arch Manning coming out of Texas here soon. So there's a lot.
That's what
sure,
Denver's waiting for. Denver's waiting for.
That's what they're waiting for. Yeah, true. They're like, why not get another Manning? We'll go to the Super Bowl. But
No,
I
we'll
still
call
think
Eli.
too. I still think too. It's like if you draft a quarterback, you've got a little bit more hope for the future, though, don't you think? Like, yes, you can go with Howell this year, and like Nick said, if he sucks, cool, you get a top 5 pick because your team is going to be pretty dog shit, really. When you look at like a team like the Carolina Panthers, they were when they tried to go when they got Bryce Young and they traded for that first overall pick last year, they were a pretty dog shit team. That's probably going to be Washington. You're right, but wouldn't you want to start off with a rookie quarterback that is supposed to be one of the, can't miss quarterbacks of this draft? Or would you want to gamble on Howell not being good and having to draft next year for a top 5 pick while also not necessarily knowing, as nobody knows what these quarterbacks, Caleb Williams, Drake Mays, are going to be, but they're saying you can hit on one of these guys, right? Like it's almost like guaranteed success in a sense. Again, nobody knows, but it's like, wouldn't you be much more confident in trying to hit on a guy this draft than waiting an entire year, seeing how the team does, if it improves? And even if you do play yourself out of a top 5 spot, what do we do now? You know what I mean? Like, do we go with Howell?
I'm going to answer that. I'm going to answer it with a no, unfortunately, because that was a very compelling argument. But hear me out, okay?
Yeah.
If you draft the right guy, but the team doesn't have the right players, it's not going to work out. I mean, there's a reason that some teams just can't figure it out, and other teams that draft the quarterback to a team that's ready to compete have different success. Like, do I think Jared Goff would have had as much success had he been on the Panthers? Probably not. I mean, look what happened to Baker. This is a prime example. Baker goes to the Panthers. The team is dog shit. The coaches are dog shit. So they have to send him to the Rams, where great team, good coaching. Oh, he looked good. Good enough for him to get an opportunity to be a starter, and he won playoff game and almost took his team to an NFC championship game. That is essentially my whole argument, is that Bryce Young was the best quarterback, apparently. You know how I feel about it, and it's only a matter of time. That will not work out. But they decided to trade all their assets to get the quarterback, and I actually think it's the other way around. You have to prepare yourself. It's like if I'm gonna, get ready to let's say a single person, and he's like, okay, I'm going to get married, but then once I get married, I'm going to grow up. I'm going to stop going to the bars. I'm going to stop dicking off. It's like, no. You have to change yourself and then get married. And I feel like a lot of teams, they have it backwards, where they're like, if we have the right quarterback, he'll make up for the shitty team. I lean more on the side of, let's get those assets. Let's get this team ready. So then when we bring in the right guy, we don't waste them. Because, I mean, look at the Broncos and Bears track history of drafting quarterbacks. And I just don't think it's a coincidence that some teams have so much more success than others. I mean, the Steelers were a solid team. Who knows what Kenny Pickett would have looked like on the Panthers? At least the Steelers were able to keep his nose above water. Mac Jones, good coaching, an okay team, goes to the Pro Bowl. The next year we kind of saw who he really is. So I like, what do you see my side a little bit? Like, you have to prepare, you got to prepare the meal and then invite company. Like, there's something that's got to go down like that, I think.
But kind of how Nick's saying, the ownership is absolutely horrible on the Panthers side. And I think with like the foundation.
Yes, that's the word I've been trying to say.
Yeah, the foundation is definitely one thing that you have to kind of look at and be like, is that a good enough foundation? Is that a good enough start for a guy coming out of college? Because you and I say it all the time, man. These college kids, they're coming out NFL ready. And you see it in a lot of these players. You saw it in CJ Stroud. You saw it in Devin Witherspoon. You saw it in Darnell Wright for the Bears, right?
Patrick
You saw it in Surtain. Surtain is a great example too. Like all these guys are pretty ready. So I think also it's like you got to look at, you mentioned the Bears drafting quarterbacks. Like we are horrendous at it, but it's like our ownership has been the same for 100 years. Our GMs like flip-flop. They overlap quarterbacks and coordinators and coaches and GMs and presidents and whatnot. So it's like, what type of organization are you if you can't get a really good base or a good foundation, like we were saying, because you are already kind of starting off on the bad foot with a rookie quarterback. So I think it is like, I totally get your side. Got to make the meal before you invite company over. Totally get that. But I also think like brand new ownership who started off correctly. Ownership hired the president, CEO, hired the GM, hiring the coach who is going to create the team and the culture and bringing in his own squad and doing that. I think that's kind of like a good way to start off a relationship with a brand new quarterback. Is like, hey, this is all kind of brand new. And guess what? We're starting this, in a sense, we're starting this entire franchise over. So like it could be bad and it could be good, but I still think like if I'm Josh Harris or, if I'm Dan Quinn too there in Washington, I think you go with a quarterback in the draft. I really do, because I totally get where you're coming from and where Nick's coming from as well, where, hey, fuck it, throw him out there. Why not? Let's see what happens. Maybe because of money too that's owed to him. He's on a rookie contract, I'm assuming. You got a ton of other guys as well that are, going to be looking for money here soon. I think Terry McLaurin already got paid. So there are probably a lot of other things that I'm not really like going into the weeds for. Just for me, I think is like, this is a great opportunity to start with a fresh slate, like just across the board.
Yeah. And I think another thing to keep in mind that kind of goes against everything that I've said up to this point is that Dan Quinn took this job knowing that the state of the franchise is kind of going through a rebirth. This is not an attractive job the way the Chargers was for Harbaugh or even Seattle. This is a totally different situation. And maybe the only reason he took it was because of the number 2 pick. So that might be, if that's one of the reasons he took the job, then of course they're going to use it to draft a quarterback. But I think what a lot of people are expecting is that he will draft a quarterback. But as Nick said, I mean, we've seen both kind of philosophies pay off in different ways. Yeah. It just kind of depends on what Dan's philosophy is, and we'll get a look at it in a little bit.
It also kind of falls too into that argument that like a lot of people have, we as well. It's like, should a rookie quarterback sit behind the veteran or should he start right away? And it's like, you saw that kind of happen in real time between Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. Look what happened when CJ Stroud started. But again, does that speak more to CJ Stroud as a player and Bryce Young as a player, or the organizations, or who they had talent?
Coach.
Yeah, head coach. Also,
a lot of moving parts, and I think the quarterback coach for the Texans actually interviewed with the Commanders. So, yeah, dude, this is what's awesome about the offseason. Is that there's so many ways things can change, and every decision is a small determination on how the next 10 years are going to be.
Honestly, though,
it's like you can always look back and see that Mahomes draft pick instead of going with Mitch Trubisky, right? Or getting Deshaun Watson, and maybe
literally anyone else in that draft.
Deshaun Watson's thinking about it, and he's like, well, if I never would have been in Houston, I never would have been getting these massages. So, like if he went to Chicago.
Tell you what, he wouldn't be getting massages nowhere in Chicago.
Because Houston's known for their strip clubs. I don't know if you've ever heard about the
I have.
They're different. Everything's
Florida
bigger. Apparently. South Florida's strip clubs, I could tell you firsthand all about them. Though there's one called 11 and I used to go to it all the time because I would get off work and it would be 5 a.m. and we wanted to like go have a drink, and it's like, where do we go? Well, there was a place called The Corner and it was open
Yeah.
till 7 a.m. and we'd go
Oh
there
my God.
and have a good time. And then at 7 a.m., that goes by like that,
Yeah.
because imagine you have a job where you get up at 3 and you went to a bar till 5 p.m. It's not a big deal. So,
No.
but it feels worse because of the hours. So it's 7 a.m. and you're like, we're not done. Right across the street is 11. All the
Yeah.
cabs are promoting 11. It's a huge deal. Like Drake goes there, and the strippers, they're not even strippers. They're professional dancers, and they
Let's
do
go.
like
It's
elegant. It is art. It is art, and there's a ton of cocaine in there. There's just a ton of
Just
wild
a
times.
ton of shit.
You can get sucked into there and get spit out at 3 p.m. Be like, what? Because it's so dark. You have no recollection. But okay. Let's talk about 13th annual NFL honors. That is going to be going on.
Let's do that.
There's going to be a lot of different awards that are going to be given out. Defensive Player of the Year, Offensive Player of the Year, Rookie of the Year, MVP, of course, Comeback Player of the Year, Coach of the Year, Assistant Coach of the Year, Defensive Rookie of the Year. I did that already. Okay. So I think we'll agree on this. Most Valuable Player, it's going to go to Lamar Jackson, right?
Yeah, more than likely.
Do you think that it should go to CMC?
No, not really. It's the quarterback is the most important position in sports. It is. I don't think there's any really like argument against that because, I think of Tua's like post game conference he had, or like it was like a spring training, a fucking NFL preseason one, and he's like, hey. Okay, he was talking to the media and he's like, I'm going to tell you a play and I want you guys to repeat it. Do you guys want me to say once or twice? And they're like, once. And he said it. And he said like 8-9 words in a row that made no sense to nobody unless you're on the Dolphins and you're the quarterback. And nobody could repeat it. That's the shit you have to be able to memorize. Not only the play calls. Can you adjust? What are you adjusting to? The defenses. Quarterbacks can read defenses, man. I mean, you look at Tony Romo in the booth talking about defenses and stuff. Tom Brady's going to be coming in soon too. You got even Greg Olsen too. Like he can recognize stuff. The centers, linemen, they recognize these things and are able to tell the difference. The quarterback though is the quarterback. He's the captain. He has to be able to say, you know what? Single high safety, triple zone coverage, whatever the fuck, and be able to manage that. CMC is an athlete. He is one of the best running backs in today's NFL. Probably going to be one of the best in history. But when you go up against a quarterback, it's so tough to argue against the quarterback. They are the guys leading the team. They are the guys who the media gets on. Not just them and not just the head coaches, but the quarterbacks. The quarterbacks are like, how much shit was Lamar getting for losing that AFC Championship game? How much shit is he going to get in the future about Lamar can't win in the playoffs? He looks bad in the playoffs. This is not a playoff Super Bowl winning type of quarterback. How many times is that going to happen? So you get the most criticism, you get the most stuff put on your shoulders, and you take that and you roll with it. I think you should be up there for MVP.
It's interesting how much things change super fast because in I think it was November, and I'm trying to find an article from November. December. Here's December 4th. That might be the best I can get. Okay, so this is from CBS, and this was in the beginning of December where this was the odds where they currently stood. So Brock Purdy was the favorite to win MVP.
Yeah.
Okay. Dak Prescott was second. Jalen Hurts was third. Mahomes was fifth, and Lamar Jackson was sixth.
Wow.
Okay. Now this was just what, 2 months ago? About almost.
February, yeah.
3 days from now, it'll be 2 months ago. So, I mean, it's just weird because Dak had a really great year. He did. And we saw, that unfolding happen. And now Dak's the fifth. So basically the analysts made their selections from the pool of finalists, and they kind of predicted how it would go. So Lamar Jackson got 23 votes. Christian McCaffrey got 5. He was in second place. Josh Allen was third with 3. Brock Purdy got 1 vote. And Dak Prescott didn't get a single vote. So I thought that was kind of weird because Dak Prescott was the best, probably the best quarterback this year. You could say Dak or Lamar, but because Dak lost that game, he drops to 5, and then Lamar's at 1, and it's like, wait, did you see what Lamar did last week? So we're gonna punish Dak for that unfolding, but we're gonna give Lamar a pass.
We gotta remember these are already calculated.
2 weeks apart, though.
These are already before the end of the season. Or at the end of the
then what made the analysts change so much in 2 months?
No, I'm saying like at the end of the season before the playoffs start, they vote on who the MVP is.
Well, if we're just talking about, then Dak Prescott has to be number 2 if that's the case. Yeah. So I don't understand how he gets dropped all the way to 5, and then somehow, because if it's based off of performance in the playoffs, which they say it's not, but it's not mathing. If it doesn't, then why did this change so much? Why did Josh Allen shoot up to 3? He wasn't even on the list.
I think you got to look at, because it really has become one of those awards, and I think we had mentioned it. It's like, who's the best quarterback the last 4 weeks of the season?
Yeah.
And you look at that and you're like, all right, well, Dak Prescott lost to the Dolphins. Tua's not going to get an MVP vote. Okay, got that. Is Brock Purdy going to get it at this point? No. Is Josh Allen going to? Yeah, he brought his team back into the playoffs from seemingly being ruled out. Lamar Jackson handled the 49ers, handled the Dolphins, handled this team, they were beating teams really well, and that offense had one of the best points differentials or I think the best point differential in the league. So I think,
but Rick, it shouldn't be that way. I think we could agree on that, because the NFL is an 18-week endeavor, and you have to be good the entire. I mean, this is a regular season award. This isn't a Final 4-week award. And if you're saying, like, right here live on the internet that the MVP is the final 4 weeks, I have a huge problem with that.
Well, but what was more important, the final 4 weeks of the season or the first 4 weeks of the season?
They're equally as important.
Well, yes, I agree in terms of value, but I'm talking about,
because if Denver didn't start 0-4, they wouldn't have been 1 game out week 16. And that happened to the Bears too.
But what happened week 18 between the Dolphins and the Bills? It was you win and you win the East, or you lose and you get out. Obviously, that was before the Jaguars lost, right? But that's what I mean. Like, yes, it's an 18-week league. I totally agree. If the Bears had won the game against the Broncos, the game against the Chiefs, the game against the Lions that they squandered, they'd probably be in the playoffs. But unfortunately, what happens is, like, so much up and down happens that the last 4, 5, 6 weeks are that much more important. But again, I totally agree, because if the Buffalo Bills didn't start off the year as shitty as they did, losing to teams that they should not have lost to, they would be in the playoffs regardless. It just happens to be that way. It's some of the most important, exciting games of the season, and it just happens to kind of fall that way, because you can look at, prior losses, prior failures, and be like, well, you should have won those games and you wouldn't be in the situation. Similar to plays in a game. Why do you have to go for the onside kick? If you had executed on plays earlier, you wouldn't have to onside kick, right? Totally agree with you there. I just think it does really matter how a team, how a quarterback, how a player who is expected to be in the MVP race performs in those very high stakes types of games. Yeah.
No, I agree that it matters. I just, And I think I think it's fair to say that it matters more than week 1 through 4, but it's like if it's a pie graph, it's
Mhm.
like 45-55. Like
Yeah.
I don't see it like 80-20.
Yeah.
Because you could make an argument that it's difficult to go through an entire offseason and come out hot.
Mhm.
It's like anybody can get hot at the end of the season. Who's going to be the dominant team week 1? Who's going to be the
Yeah.
dominant team week 2? So I think it was a good conversation to have.
Yeah.
But Nick, I was gonna
It's a good one.
say something. Let's be real. Aaron didn't teach him anything. So I don't know where you got that. I don't know why
It's
that's
true.
even. So Jordan Love, March 10th, 2023, Jordan Love admits time spent behind Aaron Rodgers was he was grateful for the experience. This is what he said. When I got drafted here, I knew right away exactly what situation I was being put into, who I was being behind. So I knew I was going to come in with time, that I was going to come in and learn and grow. But I'll admit, I think the hardest time was when Aaron re-signed the contract. I was like, okay, what do I do now? What
Mhm.
do I do? I sat back, thought to myself, came back with the approach, just go ball out. Any opportunity I get, I will get in the preseason, whatever. I'll make the most of it. But yeah, being behind a guy like Aaron Rodgers has been a huge help.
Mhm.
He's like, I've heard not, and this isn't just Nick. I've heard a lot of people say,
This is
like,
just you,
oh,
Nick. This is just you.
Aaron didn't teach Love anything. I'm like, no, Favre didn't teach Rodgers anything.
That's true.
And that is true. So
Mhm.
that is true. But Aaron, that's not true between them two. And Aaron's been
Yeah.
open about it too, about how he didn't want to treat Love like Brett Favre treated him.
Yeah. And Aaron Rodgers taught Jordan Love how to do copious amounts of ayahuasca, dude. Like, you can't say he didn't teach him anything, right?
Maybe that's why he's so good. Like maybe there's something to it. Maybe
This dude is just doing drugs all day, every day, and he's just slinging it. He's like, yep, he's open.
just like manifesting wide open targets. But okay. So you're okay with, honestly, I'm okay with Lamar winning the MVP. So I don't like that Dak drops all the way down to 5 if they're saying that, oh no, we don't take into account postseason. It's like bullshit, you don't.
Yeah.
If you're telling me if Dak was in the Super Bowl right now, he would be 4th with 0 votes. No.
That is hard to believe.
That's very hard to believe.
I still think it's hard to believe that Dak fell that much, because even you and I at one game, what game was it? I can't remember what game it was during the season, but we were talking about that. We're like, yeah, Dak is 100% an MVP candidate right now and would probably win the MVP right now.
Oh, so, yeah. Yeah. And most of the season.
But also, I believe too, is like, again, it kind of goes back to like somewhat of a recency bias where you're saying right now. It's like right now he's the best quarterback. We're not talking about Josh Allen at that point in time. We're not talking about Tua really at all in the season. We're not talking about Mahomes either, even though like he was still winning football games and like atop his division. You know what I mean? Like, we're not talking about that. We like Dak Prescott was throwing for 400 plus yards, 3+ touchdowns. It seemed like game in, game out, especially at home. They were just killing it. But it just seems to be that sort of recency bias as well when we say right now or in the last 5-6 weeks of the season. Yes, Josh Allen does deserve a little bit more MVP because he was able to kind of get his team into the playoffs, or Lamar Jackson was smoking teams the last few weeks to get that number 1 seed. So,
well, last year Mahomes won it. Okay, he went to the Super Bowl. The year before that, Aaron Rodgers won it, but he won a playoff game. Or 2021. Yeah, he won a playoff game and then lost in the NFC Championship. So the reoccurring theme is you have to win at least one playoff game. You can be eliminated in the conference championship. The year before, the Packers were eliminated, I believe, in the conference championship. Aaron Rodgers won it again, back-to-back. 2019, Lamar Jackson won it. That was his crazy year. Didn't they beat the Texans Or did they lose to the Texans in the playoff? That was, I think, his
they
one
lost to
win.
the Titans, I thought. No?
It might have been.
Yeah,
I think
Titans.
let me see. 2019 Ravens. How far did they go?
I think they went 2 games that year.
So they made it to. They were first in the AFC North. They had a 14-2 record. Holy crap! They were number 1 in points for. And they lost in the divisional round to the Titans. You're right.
Yeah.
So, okay, there's one, but I mean that's an exception for one of the best seasons we saw. Remember, Lamar went off that year. So, to me, I think there can be exceptions if you're just literally talent. But if it's a toss-up, it's like, well, who won? Who was later into the season? The year before that, Mahomes went to the Super Bowl and got it. The year before that, Tom Brady went to the Super Bowl. And 2017, yeah, they beat the Patriots, or that they beat the Chiefs in Mahomes in that playoff game. The year before that, it was Matt Ryan went to the playoffs. The year before that, or Matt Ryan went to the Super Bowl. The year before that, Cam Newton went to the Super Bowl. So I mean, you got to admit that I could keep going down this list. It's not much different. It's the one difference is Adrian Peterson in 2012. He had that 2,000-yard season.
Yeah.
And won it. But when you really go down this list, everybody pretty much won a playoff game, or they were just out of this world, separated from everybody else. And that only happened really once with Lamar in 2019.
Well, I guess with all that being said, though, my question is, do you not believe that the voting is done before the playoffs, actual?
I don't.
You don't believe that? Okay.
Right. No, I don't. There's no way it changes so much in the, I mean.
But I think it.
No,
I think
don't.
Those points given were like, I think there's more. I think you look at that and you're like, oh, a bit more believable, because look, I am kind of also on that like side where I'm like, they probably fucking wait until, like you said, 1 to 2 to 3 playoff games, and then they really decide who's gonna win it. Because I am also very like conspiracy type of person. I don't know, man. Not a lot of it seems to fit to where, yes, every time the Super Bowl winner, someone from that team from the Super Bowl winner wins it, or the most dominant divisional performer in the divisional round of the playoffs won the award. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't think it fits it as much, but I'm also on that side of like, this is all kind of fixed at one point,
Aaron Rodgers won 4 MVPs. I thought he won 3. But he won
one. He won the one last year. The two back to back, and then one a while ago, right?
He won, one in 2011, and then he won another one in 2014, and then 2020 and 2021. Okay. And then Peyton Manning won a shit ton as well. He's got like 5. He won back-to-back MVPs at 2 different points in his career. 2003 and 2004 he won them. 2008 and 2009 he won them.
Really?
And then he won one with Denver, and that was his best statistical year he ever had, was 2013. Yeah. And that was that year. God, it feels so long ago. But yeah, okay, we'll move off the MVP. Let's move on. Offensive Player of the Year. Before we go, CMC, of course, because I'm telling you right now, he's got 23 votes, and number 2 only has 7. But I think there's a real case for this number 2. It's Tyreek Hill. And Tyreek Hill was on pace to be the first wide receiver to ever, ellipse the 2,000-yard mark. And
he was close. Yeah, he was very close.
He was on track, and then he got an ankle injury, and then it kept him out of games, and he ends up with like 1,700, 1,800. But I mean, what do you think? Like, do you think CMC runs away with it? Or because at the same time, you could make a real case that CMC's wasn't even the most, I mean, you know how I feel about CMC, but Trent Williams and Deebo Samuel, they might be just as important to that team as CMC. So Tyreek Hill kind of feels like that. Like when you took even who's the other guy? Not
Ayuk?
Tyreek Hill.
Waddle.
Jalen Waddle. When you took him out, who he's I think they're going to exercise his 5th-year option. They should. But when you took him out of the game plan, you saw what the Dolphins look like. So I think there's a really good argument for Tyreek Hill. I think there's a good argument for CeeDee Lamb and CMC, but I really think it's between CMC and Tyreek Hill. What do you think?
I'm kind of on the same boat with you because we saw what the Dolphins were without him.
Yeah.
Eclipse. Yeah. We saw what they were without him, and it was really difficult to get them going when you see the offense and the way it was, because we even mentioned it during one game. It's like, you don't have Tyreek in. Yeah, you got Jalen Waddle and you got all these running backs and you got these guys who can help you win, but somehow it just becomes easier to beat the Dolphins, without Tyreek. And I mean, Tyreek is that much of a difference maker in the offense that, yeah, that makes total sense. Like, yeah, absolutely, we could cover Jalen Waddle better than Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill is a fucking cheetah. That's why his nickname is Cheetah. Like, he could go across the field, back across the field, go vertical, all in like 5 fucking seconds, and you lost him, and now you're trying to catch up. And he can pass. And now, next thing you know, you're trying to chase him fucking 10 yards behind him for a touchdown catch. It's like, oh shit. Whereas CMC, he's a huge upgrade to what the 49ers were working with at running back, when they got him last year. Huge upgrade. But you're right. It seems to be a little bit more on the Deebo Samuel, on the Trent Williams. Like, when those guys were out, it was like this 49ers team fell into a 3-game losing streak. It was difficult to, for Brock Purdy to, what was it, score more than like 17 12
points.
Something. Yeah, something like that.
They were averaging like 17 points. And then when Deebo's playing, they averaged 31, which is that I could understand 17, 24. That's still a big deal, but 17, 31. Wow.
Yeah.
I think Trent Williams might. Why don't the big guys ever win? Like, you see when Trent
Williams.
They're not going to. I really think I'm going to cast a vote for Trent Williams, because every time he's out of the game, the 49ers are ass. Like, they're terrible.
We should create a Trenches Award.
Yes.
I think we should, for the best offensive lineman in each position. I'm talking center, left and right guard, left and right tackle. I think we should do that and just like award it to somebody.
Or we'll start a petition.
Or something like that. We'll just have like a fucking live stream and be like, who's got your vote right now? You know what I mean? So I think it'd be cool.
Okay, defensive player of the year. This one is more of a toss-up as far as the analyst. You got TJ Watt and you got Myles Garrett. Some of the other mentions will, of course, Micah Parsons, Deron Bland, who had the most pick sixes, and Max Crosby. But I think it's going to go between Myles Garrett and TJ Watt. And I think it's TJ Watt. What do you think?
Yeah, TJ Watt. You want to talk about defensive player of the year, and I think Ginger had said something about the MVP being the most important. Like, MVP should be, and I agree with this, Ginger. Would a team absolutely collapse without this player? And if you want to talk about a team that collapses without a player, it is TJ Watt and the Steelers.
Yeah,
it is 100% TJ Watt and the Steelers. You saw, I remember a stat that I had looked up, and it was like their record without TJ Watt. And I think it was for their playoff game against Buffalo. It was horrendous. It was so bad. It was maybe 1 win, 2 wins.
They're totally. I mean, I don't think there's any player that impacts a team, especially defensively, as much as TJ Watt does for the Steelers. I mean, it's like the wins are different, the points are different, time of possession, of course, changes. Like he's the glue holding it all together. Like, if he's gone, it all falls apart. I agree with you.
So I think TJ Watt has to be up there. Myles Garrett, don't get me wrong, he is a force to fucking reckon with, and he was really the anchor of that Browns defense. But the Browns defense had a ton of good players, and in the playoffs, I don't think Myles Garrett really made a difference, against the Texans in that game. So it just kind of seems to be like, I wonder if it's like the big moments kind of disappears. Like
Neither did TJ Watt though.
Well, he wasn't playing, I thought. Wasn't he
I
not
know.
playing?
I know. That's what I'm saying. He didn't make a difference.
You're an asshole. But I just like Myles Garrett again. He's a force, and honestly, Max Crosby being what, like fourth or fifth in that conversation. Max Crosby's also a crazy bastard too. But TJ Watt definitely gets my vote for sure. Micah Parsons is third on that list. He was on a very good defense. So, I mean, the numbers kind of get a little skewed and the arguments go a little more towards, but was he the defensive player of the year?
And he's held the most too.
And he's held the most as well. Yeah. So,
okay.
I'm going TJ Watt.
This one, I think, is going to be the saddest category because this is going to be offensive rookie of the year. And it's got to go to CJ Stroud. It just has to.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, we're left with Puka Nacua and what he's done this year. I mean, you could make a real argument that he's the wide receiver 1. Cooper Kupp is now the 2. And Cooper Kupp was a guy 2 years ago that was on the list up there with Lamar Jackson for the MVP.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, triple crown. Yards, catches, touchdowns, all of it. So
he was up there.
Puka Nacua to surpass somebody like that as a rookie, it's one of the historical rookie performances since the NFL's been a thing. And to think that he's just not going to get anything for it, it really does like feel a little bit like an injustice. But I think it has to go to CJ Stroud. But that's the thing about these awards is you only have one of them, and there's usually multiple people that are worthy of it. I would think this is probably the greatest example of that.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's just, you got to go with CJ Stroud and what he did as a rookie quarterback with a team that had a rookie head coach that you went into that organization and you're like, yeah, they're going to try their best. They're going to try their hardest to win a few games. Totally did not expect for them to go to the playoffs, win the division. Any of that. All that was out the window before CJ Stroud was even picked number 2 in the draft. So you got to give it to him. Puka Nacua did a ton of great stuff. And again, he should also be recognized, and I think he will. And one way he's going to be recognized is he's going to get paid. He's going to get paid when his contract, comes up. He's 100% going to get paid if he continues his success. And I think throughout the NFL, throughout his time in the NFL, he's going to be one of those guys that gets recognized a lot. I could see him honestly having like a career like CeeDee Lamb. Well, I don't know if I want to go that far that quick.
Calvin Johnson.
Maybe Calvin Johnson. Yeah. It's just Puka Nacua just to me seems more of like a CeeDee Lamb type where he got picked in the first round, didn't do too much his rookie year, although Puka Nacua did a lot. But all of a sudden it's like CeeDee Lamb is number 1. CeeDee Lamb is number 1. And Puka Nacua, like you said, he already overtook Cooper Kupp, and he's going to be that guy there in LA for a very, very long time, I think.
But I think he was drafted in like the 4th round or 5th round.
Yeah, something like that. But CeeDee Lamb was first round. Yeah. So a little different because he was able to overachieve where he was picked. And dude, you talk about CJ Stroud and Puka Nacua, and you look at the other guys on here, Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta, Bijan Robinson. Bijan Robinson wasn't used nearly as well as he should have in Atlanta, and that's one of the reasons Arthur Smith got fired. But that offensive rookie of the year, like class, those options, huge, man. Just weapons all around.
And we talked about yesterday how I do predict that the Lions are going to be back in these big games. And part of that is because below Puka Nacua are 2 Lions, Jahmyr Gibbs and Sam Laporta, tied for 3rd. Bijan Robinson also tied for 3rd. I want to preface this with the absolute most reverence as I can have for this player. We're going to talk about the comeback player of the year.
Yeah.
And I don't think DeMar Hamlin should. I understand like what happened, but that's really not what the award is. Like, and I didn't think Alex Smith necessarily. Okay, Alex Smith's journey was a little bit different. And from somebody that's had an injury very similar where amputation was on the table, like I understand that process, and I can't believe he got himself, I'm talking about Alex Smith, got himself back into football. I don't know the ins and outs of Damar Hamlin's medical stuff, but I can understand that there is a difference between dying on the field. Like I said, I'm not being insensitive to any of this, but dying on the field and coming back to life and, having to monitor your heart or whatever's going on there. And the type of pain that is required to come back in the way Alex Smith did. And look, the one thing they both have in common is they're warriors, and they both have a tremendous amount of balls for coming back. But I think it's got to go to Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield, he was supposed to just be a burner quarterback so that Tampa could get a good draft pick and move up. And he got the team, and it didn't look like he was going to, do that well. But it kind of reminded me in a way of Tom Brady. Tom Brady spent his first year in Tampa trying to figure out this offense. And then late in the season, they got hot and won the Super Bowl. Baker spent about that same amount of time. Maybe it took a little bit longer, and no, they didn't win a Super Bowl, but they did host a playoff game. They did win that playoff game against the Eagles, who were among most people in the beginning of the season, the Super Bowl favorite. And then he did also take that team to Detroit and play a hell of a game. I think he had 6 touchdown passes and 1 pick in those 2 games. The 1 pick wasn't his fault, by the way. I just think what Baker's done as far as securing the long-term contract that I think is nearing, I just think it's got to go to Baker because he made more of an impact in the football world this year for his team than Damar Hamlin did. And I know that Damar Hamlin's probably going to win it, but I think it's one of those where it's like, of course we got to give it to Damar Hamlin, but I'm not sure that it should be that way.
Yeah, and to be honest, I don't think you look at something like this and you're like, does Damar Hamlin want to win it? Would he want to win it? Maybe. But to be honest, I don't think he would, because what he went through was like tragic. Like it was very, very crazy what happened. We were, streaming that game when something happened. We had to go into our episode right after that, what happened, and just kind of like in that shock and awe, because we're like, what did someone just die on the field? Like we watched it. Luckily, that was not the case. Yeah, it was a crazy moment in football.
Well, it was the case, but he came back.
He came back, yeah, and he is where he is now. He's still on the Bills. He played a couple games, played a few snaps. So I think we can be able to recognize what happened was an insane thing and hopefully never happens again. But also we have to look at a comeback player of the year and think like Baker Mayfield just got his offensive coordinator a head coaching job because of what he did with him this year. Like really kind of plainly put, Canales would not probably be up for a head coaching position if Baker Mayfield and him hadn't worked as hard and turned out to be such a great pair like he was this year. So I'm there with you. I love Baker because last year with the Carolina Panthers, with the Rams, going to where else did he go to? He went to another team.
What
right?
Cleveland did to him?
Yeah, what Cleveland did to him. Like that's just
it though. Those were the 3.
Okay, so those are the 4th team. Okay.
Well, the Bucks, I guess, would be the 4th.
Yeah, the Bucks would be the 4th. So it's just to me it's no brainer because he was able to take a very like a kind of leftovers team from the Tom Brady era and get them into the playoffs by winning their division. You know what I mean? So for me, like that's a comeback player if anything, because again, Baker Mayfield was down in the dumps, and now look where he's at. He won a playoff, and there's definitely like want for him. There's a definite market for Baker Mayfield.
Ginger, I can't with you right now, dude. You just
I think it's dead on. No pun intended.
oh my god, dude! I'm sitting here and I'm like internalizing it. I feel my eyes water up. Like,
God damn it, Ginger.
damn it, Ginger!
No, Ginger.
No, bad
Terrible.
Ginger. Okay, defensive
No, that was
rookie of the
hilarious.
year. Okay,
was
wait.
hilarious.
The other couple. Of course, I don't want to brush over it. Joe Flacco, right? I mean,
I
he's
like
not
the
going to win,
story.
but the name
No.
should be up there.
Yeah, I think it's up there.
And that's a big part of these awards is because they put up a 1 minute video of the nominees, and sometimes the story's just too good. It's like if they only put the video up of the guy that won, the show would go by like that. Like part of the fun is like revisiting all these stories between all these players. So I think Joe Flacco is a great name to be up there, and the video is going to be awesome. But I think he's the last serious candidate, even though he won't win. And then Matthew Stafford and Tua. Tua coming back, I guess, from the head injuries, and Matthew Stafford coming back. But
I was also gonna say, like, how awkward is it gonna be if Baker does win and he's got to sit next to the guy who died for a few minutes on the field and have to go up there and be like, "Thank you."
Do you know? Okay, I didn't think so. Yeah, it is. It is awkward. These award, and the Warrior games is a great example of all these politicians that come up and they're like, they act like they, they're just checking a box. Like, oh, I came and I talked to the wounded warriors. Prince Harry came in. It's like, okay, but like, this dog and pony show is just for your campaign. It's not about us.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it too. Like the NFL is like comeback player of the year. Let's use DeMar Hamlin's story, to promote whatever. I don't think it's intentional, but it's just the person that was affected generally feels that way. So you were right on about that.
Yeah.
Defensive rookie of the year, Will Anderson. That's what they're saying is going to be the number one pick, but Kobe Turner and Devin Witherspoon, of course, from Seattle.
Love Devon Witherspoon.
Yeah, he's solid. And then Jalen Carter for the Eagles, and then Joey Porter, which is cool because he plays for the same team his dad played for.
Yeah, that was pretty dope. I don't really have any issues with Will Anderson. He was really good with the Texans too. Maybe Devon Witherspoon over Kobe Turner. Just because of all the interceptions. I think he had a pick 6 if I'm not mistaken, but either way, like all those interceptions, man, like he was killing it. And to be honest, I have a soft spot for University of Illinois people, so I got him.
Yeah, and I think Will Anderson, what they did by drafting CJ Stroud and then going Will Anderson right away is like something that I think other teams might try to emulate in the future. And sell the farm to get, back-to-back picks like that because and the reason is because Will Anderson proved it to be the right choice. So, I mean, you can change a whole franchise by getting a defensive piece you can build around. I mean, they basically drafted like Peyton Manning and Von Miller,
Yeah.
So I think just everything Houston's doing right now is all on the up and up. Another one.
Sorry, real quick. I was just laughing at Nick's comment. Baker really revived his career to win that award.
Oh, God. Bad Nick.
You guys are terrible. You guys are terrible. No, I love it. I love it.
Here's one that I think we'll agree on. But you could make a serious case for every single person on this list. Besides, I think number 5. Okay, this is going to be Coach of the Year, and DeMeco Ryans is number 1. He came in to a franchise that wasn't expecting to be super successful, brought him to the playoffs, won these games. What about Dan Campbell, though? Dan Campbell, he also took a franchise that hadn't been in the postseason in 31 years and took a team that went 1-15, 7-10, 8-9, and then all of a sudden they're this playoff team. I mean, what he's done in those 3 years, and I don't believe he's won an award for it yet. And it feels like a little bit like if he's not going to win it this year, like like when when is he going to win it next year?
Yeah.
And then Kevin Stefanski did something very similar in Cleveland, bringing in Joe Flacco. Kyle Shanahan with the 49ers. I feel like he's always on this list, yet he never wins. Right?
Yeah, 100%. He never does.
And then John Harbaugh, which had the best team in the NFL throughout the whole season.
Yeah.
So to me, it's DeMeco Ryans or Dan Campbell. But I think DeMeco Ryans is going to end up winning it.
Yeah, I would pick Dan Campbell over DeMeco Ryans just because Dan Campbell, this is his third year. So the work has been put in. And I'm not saying DeMeco Ryans didn't put any work into the Texans. Just to me, like you said, to be able to take the Lions into a playoff hosting game after a 30-year drought. I get DeMeco Ryans and what he did with a rookie quarterback and really a broken franchise. But the Detroit Lions have been one of the most broken franchises for 3 decades. So,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
They have been in the playoffs like Houston's been with Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, exactly. Like at least the Texans kind of had a little couple years of glory there. But yeah, man, I Kevin Stefanski, obviously Kyle Shanahan, obviously what they've been doing throughout the years, but I think Dan Campbell deserves this a little bit more. Kevin Stefanski kind of coached his way into the playoffs with all those injuries, injuries to his fucking $400 million quarterback, whatever it was. That sucks. But again, Dan Campbell taking really like a ragtag bunch of guys, to hosting a playoff game for the first time in 30 years in Detroit, one of the most blue collar cities. Like, I think you got to give it to Dan. But
not really a city you can sell to free agents.
No, you can't. You really can't.
That's a team that you have to build from the ground up.
Yeah,
and that's what he did.
Ann Arbor is like an hour south. That's cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so no one's moving to Detroit to visit Ann Arbor.
Exactly. Canada's
unless you're Rich Eisen.
Unless you're Rich Eisen.
But
I would pick Dan,
I agree with
you. Giving it to DeMeco. Yeah.
I agree with you because I mean, that's why I hate these awards in a way, because like DeMeco deserves an award too. But so does Kevin Stefanski. But it can only go to one, and it'll probably go to DeMeco Ryans because he was dealing with a rookie quarterback, and I think the success Detroit had was almost predictable, whereas the Texans' success was a surprise to I think a lot of people. Okay, assistant coach of the year. They only have one person listed. I don't know if that means that it's like game over. Oh no, it's 2 coaches.
Yeah.
Oh no, there's 4.
3 more below there. Yeah.
Okay, so Ben Johnson is number 1, tied with Mike Macdonald, who is now the head coach. I wonder if that'll play into it at all.
Yeah.
That fact that he's a head coach now. But I feel like you got to give the flowers somewhere, and if you're not giving them to Dan Campbell, you got to give them to Ben Johnson. Like, no, you can't just walk away from this team and like nobody won anything. The other mentions were Bobby Slowick, the Texans offensive coordinator. Mm-hmm. That's probably how they'll play it out. Either, and because
one or the other.
Yeah, and because the Texans offensive coordinator is 3rd and not 1 or 2, I think it's going to go that way where Ben Johnson does win it. But then Todd Monken, the Ravens offensive coordinator, of course, the Raiders aren't in here for anything. They're awful. And then Jim Schwartz, the Browns defensive coordinator, tied for 4th. That was probably the nastiest defense this year besides the Ravens. So I think I agree with this analyst chart between Ben Johnson and Mike Macdonald. This is the last category, but who would you go with?
I think you got to go Ben Johnson. I really do. Jared Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, rookie tight end, a rookie running back, and a David Montgomery type running back. Like that offense did really well. You had one of the best offensive lines there, and you were able to take advantage of that this year and, go on to win the division, go on to the NFC Championship. Yeah, you lost there, but you put on a fucking clinic on the 49ers in that first half. Like, you looked good throughout the game and throughout the season, really, as the offensive coordinator. So I'm going Ben Johnson. I like what Mike McDonald did for the Ravens with their stellar defense. And honestly, Jim Schwartz, the Browns defensive coordinator, also another kind of like low key, really good pick. I think he should be above Monken and Bobby Slowick. If I'm being honest, like, he's been in the league for years. Jim Schwartz used to be the head coach of the Lions. He was the head coach for that 0-16 year. So he's been in the league for a long time. And for him to continue to do this with, as many years as he's put into the NFL, I think he should probably be like maybe a second or third option there, or at least second or third most vote getter. But with what's happening with the Lions, again, like you said, if you're not going to give it to Dan Campbell and you're going to give it to DeMeco Ryans, then you got to give it to Ben Johnson for assistant of the year.
Yeah, dude, I agree. And last question, do you think any of these categories is going to have a unanimous winner?
No.
Or if there is one, which one would it be?
If there is one, a unanimous vote getter, it's probably going to be comeback player of the year for DeMar Hamlin. Because I think everyone's just going to vote for him. If I'm being honest, like, MVP, it's going to be a quarterback award. Offensive player of the year, I think Christian McCaffrey and Tyreek Hill are going to garner most of that attention. Defensive player of the year, like you said, TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, probably going to be the top two. So
I think offensive rookie of the year is going to be unanimous potentially.
You think so for CJ Stroud?
Yeah, but
Okay.
but at the same time, there's got to be at least one guy that's like Puka Nacua.
Yeah.
There's got to be at least one. But if there was a unanimous one, I could see it going. I could see it going there. But
yeah,
all right,
100%.
That's all I got for that.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Oh wait, Kyle, there's one more thing left.
What is it?
There's the little chives.
All right, I got two quick things. Both AFC West things. So Nick, listen up. The Raiders, the Raiders are expected to hire former Cardinals head coach Cliff Kingsbury as offensive coordinator. Cliff Kingsbury made it out of the Philippines. Everybody give him a round of applause.
Let's go. Some people never make it back. Got out there alive. Didn't have to learn Muay Thai.
I know how much Americans love the Philippines. All right, so Cliff Kingsbury heads back to the NFL, and Antonio Pierce takes on the full-time head coaching gig with the Raiders, and then he will be the offensive coordinator. Of course, he's with the Cardinals from 2019 2022. Went 28-37 in his first NFL coaching gig, and now he's going to bounce back with the Raiders. Hopefully it goes awful. Another thing that I'm hoping fails is the second news. The Chargers head coach Jim Harbaugh on return to the NFL. I want another shot to be simply known as world champions. And as I read this, something occurred to me, and I'll get to it after I read his quote. The opportunity presented, I felt that the Spanos family, the Chargers organization, they made it clear that they liked what I did and how I did it. That's all you could ever want from somebody that's employing you, he told reporters. Gotta love Michigan, love the NFL. This opportunity, my dad would say, who's got it better than us? This is what I've been thinking. I don't know if they're like, obviously every coach wants to win the Super Bowl, but I don't think there's been ever this much focus on a coach wanting it so much, if that makes sense. Like, this is what this whole thing is even about. He's the first coach to ever win a national championship and leave. It's never happened before. And we knew the whole time the only reason that he was leaving so he could have a chair at the big boy table with his brother. And he wants to have that ring. And it's the reason he's in the NFL. Do you think that that's a little bit unique? Like, because it's like normally NFL coaches are just always trying to move up. It's like, okay, I got the job. It's like a career path. To me, this feels more like a passion. And I know there's coaches like Sean Payton and Andy Reid and Belichick and a lot of great coaches that are passionate about winning a Super Bowl, but they've been in this world for so long that it's just like the natural progression.
Yeah.
Whereas Harbaugh, it feels like he's only here for the ring, you know?
Yeah, I could see that. And it just seems to be the passion is like super strong with him. But I don't think you could take away. I don't think by saying that you take away from any of the other coaches. You know, Dan Campbell's one guy that I look at that I'm just like, that guy wants to fucking win at all costs, you know, biting kneecaps, shit like that, getting punched, come back up. But Jim Harbaugh, man, he's been doing it for such a long time too. So I think, like you said, like the want is there because of how he got beat in the Super Bowl that he was at. It's by his brother. And if you know anything about their relationship, it's always kind of been like one of those like, we're brothers, but we're gonna fuck each other up. You know what I mean? Like we're gonna
That's
hold
why
each
he's in
other's
the
head down.
AFC.
Exactly. Why, you know, like he wants to not really compete with his brother in the Super Bowl anymore. But you know, just shit like that. I think his passion is just huge to sit at the big boy table, like he says. He said it himself. He wants to do that. So I just think it's up there. Is it unique? Yeah, I would probably say that. I don't think I've really heard of any other coaches talk like this. Like honestly, like really, I don't. I can't think of one coach who has spoken about winning a Super Bowl as much as like Jim Harbaugh has, you know, before he went to Michigan or Stanford, wherever it was he started, and now again back in the NFL.
Yeah, that's the same way I was thinking about it when I was reading that. And he said, I'm really thinking about my accountability and just making sure that I'm ready. I'm excited about the challenge. Let's see if I'm man enough, a good enough coach so that all his hard work can be realized. I want to work really hard so that his hard work is going to be realized. He's talking about Justin Herbert. Justin and every player on our football team around Herbert, of course, there's still roster questions. A couple key players that are entering free agency, including Austin Eckler, and the team's lack of cap space. The Chargers are predicted to be $45 million over the cap in 2024. It could lead to hard decisions on keeping high value players, but Harbaugh does have a history of turning around teams in a quick way. With Michigan, he took a 5-7 team and went 10-3 in his first year. And we know the rest of the story. And he did the same thing with the 49ers. He turned them around and had them with a 13-3 record. So there's going to, I don't think it's going to be easy, but the last thing he said is don't let the powder blues fool you. That's what we're going to aspire to do.
Nice.
I don't even understand what that means. But it's
like
cool if you're a Chargers fan.
Color, I guess. I don't know.
Okay. Don't let the powder blues fool you. We're nasty.
Or like the fact that the Chargers haven't won anything in forever. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like
Yeah, a lot of ways to interpret that, but that's what I got for my chives. I hope both coaches just tremendously fail. I hope that everyone's revisiting this like, oh my God, these are such bad decisions. Why the hell did we draft these guys?
AFC West.
Yeah.
AFC West is going to be the division of coaches. That's for sure. You guys got some
about it. Sean Payton, Andy Reid, Harbaugh. There's going to be some good football games.
Yeah.
I'm so sad, dude. I miss watching Broncos so much.
Yeah.
It hit me.
I know. I feel that because I was watching highlights of like the Bears not too long ago, and I was like, oh God, that looks so sick.
At least you're not in pain, though.
Yeah, that's true. Nick said, correction, Rick. The Chargers haven't won anything ever. Good point. Good correct. All right, guys. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. Again, you know, we had 2 episodes in a row, but because I was a little sick earlier this week, we couldn't get the episodes out earlier. But next week, expect, you know, Monday, possible Wednesday, possible Thursday. We'll see.
You're gonna have to be on guard.
Might have to might have some people you know, come in, talk a little bit about the Super Bowl. So stay tuned for Super Bowl week here on the Only Football Podcast. And as always, go follow us on X. You can follow me at And Now Rick. You can go follow the Only Football page at Only Football KR. Kyle, where can they follow you?
You can find me at NFL with Kyle. NFL with Kyle.
Make sure
Go
to
ahead.
follow us
Easy
there.
name, right? Easy
Yeah.
name.
And before you guys leave, please make sure to drop a like on the video, a subscribe, tell your friends, tell your family, tell everybody who is anybody about the Only Football Podcast. Let's get our numbies up and let's hit 1,000 before
I'll
the new
shoot you
season
if you
starts.
don't.
Kyle will shoot.
Put that
Kyle
like.
will
Give
shoot.
me that like. Like it.
Kyle, always a good time, brother.
All right. So.